Ecuador. This would be the 9th country on our long journey from Canada down south. We would pass through jungles filled with waterfalls, endless sandy beaches, and snowy drives over 15,000 feet. We would also add a new member to the Go Alone team. This is Ecuador, the land of volcanoes.
Turn now to the chilling images coming in from Ecuador late today. Armed men storming a live TV broadcast in Ecuador. The studio crew
firing off guns and waving.
This would also be the story of our return to a country in a state of emergency. After nearly 3 months in what would become one of our favorite countries, it was time to leave Colombia. We made our way into Ecuador via the north border between Ipiales and Tulcan. Shortly after crossing the border, the environment became hot and arid, and surprisingly to us, we noticed the local currency is the US dollar. We made our way to a campground well known to overlanders passing through the area, the German-owned Finca Summerwind. Here, we would meet with some friends to celebrate our first night in a new country. Yay! This campground is located along the shores of the Laguna de Yaguacocha, meaning Lake of Blood in the Quechua language, named after a multi-sided battle and Inca massacre that occurred along its shores centuries ago. The following morning, after saying goodbye to our friends, we made our way towards the town of Otavalo, passing through Ibarra along the way. Otavalo is home to South America's biggest market. This market is famous for its various artisanal products and textiles. After finding some parking, we made our way into the Otavalo Market. We eventually found a poncho and made our way further south towards Quito. Soon, we saw the first of the 47 volcanoes found in Ecuador. Here, we passed through a potential camp spot. After taking some videos, we elected to keep driving a little further, which brought us to a camp that sat almost exactly on the equator. While checking out the damage the sandflies did to Nikki's legs at our first spot, we were approached by a man who turned out to be the brother of our host. He had a flat tire and guessed we might be carrying a compressor, which we were. The following morning we had an offer from our host to visit a family-owned cafe. His father Valentin walked us up the road. It was a clear day and we got some views on one of the snow-capped volcanoes in the distance. Here, we were treated to a coffee and learned about the process of making Biscoches, a technique that was brought over by the Spanish some time ago.
This traditional thing, you don't need to dip into coffee to eat them. You really enjoy the texture they have. That's the idea. Combining the different flavors, combining the different...
The process of making these Biscoches is somewhat niche to the town of Cayambe, where the few families that practice this technique are known as Biscocheros. The Biscoches are typically had with a layer of dulce de leche, a type of condensed milk, and a piece of young cheese. We both really enjoyed the textures and flavors of these pastries. How's it? We also got to see various agave products, including an art piece that was made from the thorns on the ends of the agave plant. The cafe here had local products from different regions around Ecuador, including coffee and fruit-infused chocolates made across the street. After getting a few things, we made our way back to camp. Here, we met Tommy the llama
puede llegar así. Ahí, así. Cógele. Téngale de la silla.
Despite the great hospitality of our hosts, we were in a little bit of a rush. Nikki would be going home for the Christmas holidays, and we wanted to have a chance to see the famous Cotopaxi National Park before she left. This route would take us around the outskirts of Quito, climbing and descending multiple large mountain passes. Without a doubt, Ecuador would prove to be the most demanding country for our vehicle. The high elevations meant that we were burning less fuel with the thinner air, so we stopped quickly to adjust our fuel pump as we were seeing fairly high exhaust gas temperatures. Eventually, we were making our way to the park. Ecuador's national parks are all free, which was a pleasant surprise. After registering at the main gate, which served almost more as a portal to another world, we made our way through. Words would not be enough to describe the scenes that waited for us. The clouds would temporarily part ways, revealing parts of the ice-capped volcano, as we made our way up to the parking lot just above 4,500 meters in elevation. Here, we would walk a deceptively short 300 meters higher to Cotopaxi's Refugio. As we neared the top, the winds would clear the clouds and reveal the volcano before us. We were both feeling the effects of the elevation and decided to make our way back down shortly after. This time, we would take the direct route down instead of the switchbacks we had taken up. With the truck's still undiagnosed electrical issue, we weren't sure how it would start at this elevation.
Wow, easy.
Luckily, this time we had no issues and made our way down the volcano for a walk around the Laguna de Limpio Pungo. Finally, it was time to make it to what would become one of our favorite camp spots of all time. The early morning sun would melt away the clouds, giving us spectacular views as we prepared to drive the lesser visited east side of the park. First, however, we would have to start the truck. Shortly after getting on the road, we ran into a woman who needed a lift to the other side of the park. Since the back of the truck is used for storage, a ride on the rear bumper was the best we could offer. After dropping her off, we made our way into the stunning east end of the park. The long golden grass and crystal clear waters of Cotopaxi would entice more than just those traveling through the area. These are Cotopaxi's wild horses. As we made our way further into the park, we took walks through the rhythmically swaying tall grass to crystal clear mineral springs bubbling out of the ground. Periodically, the volcano's blue ice-capped peak would be visible through the clouds until finally revealing itself completely. We made our way back to Quito along the Avenue of Volcanoes, a part of the Inca Trail made entirely of cobble. After dropping Nikki off at the airport, I made my way 3 hours south towards the town of Banos to start a loop through Ecuador, alone once again. Banos would be a place I would pass through and stay in multiple times during the trip in Ecuador, complete with peaceful streets, cheap restaurants, waterfalls, and a nearly perfect, temperate climate. The town's layout has 2 central squares, a local market, and lots of activities in the surrounding areas, making it a popular destination for Ecuadorian tourists as well. It would also have some great paid camping options along the Rio Pastaza that cuts its way through the canyon beside the town. After completing the Colombia video and nearly getting over some sort of flu, I made my way towards Chimborazo to meet up with some friends. Surprisingly, the drive there would have the truck and I driving through some light snow, a first for us in Latin America. These would also be the only views I would get at the peak of Ecuador's tallest volcano. Soon, I had met up once again with the Toyota World Runners, who were kind enough to feed me some chili while I recovered from my mysterious illness. After a cold and wet night, it was time to make our attempt at driving up the volcano. Along the way, we saw some wild vicuñas, which are the national animal of not Ecuador, but Peru. After making our way through the fog and signing in at the main gate, we started to drive up Chimborazo, a volcano taller than Mount Kilimanjaro. As we made our way higher and higher up the switchbacks, the layer of snow covering the earth began to grow thicker. Eventually, the landscape was totally white, with black edges of volcanic rock poking through the snow. Both of our trucks had successfully driven up to the refugio, sitting at nearly 5,000 meters of elevation. After joining the collection of stickers on the refugio windows, we made our way once again to the town of Banos. Here, we enjoyed the peace and quiet of a family-owned project working on converting a former quarry to a campground. We decided to spend the day checking out some of the waterfalls in the area, along what is known as the waterfall route. Some of these waterfalls could be seen easily from the side of the road, while others required a short hike or the use of a suspension bridge. We made our way back to camp, and the following morning were invited for a tour around the property. We took a ride down in an old quarry truck with some dogs and got shown some natural mineral pools, as well as really crazy obsidian-type volcanic rock. Banos sits under the volcan Chimborazo, and in the past, lava outflows have come through this area, creating the rock. The family also gave us some fruit and avocados that grow naturally in some wild vegetation on the property. In the morning, we took some photos and then went our separate ways. The two other world runners were heading to Peru, while I would be making my way towards Ecuador's coast. The snowy mountains soon faded into the distance behind me as I made my way into the foggy jungle between the high plateaus and the coast. After a long day of driving, I found myself nearing the city of Guayaquil. Initially, the plan was to find a hotel there, but after doing some more research, I instead contacted a guy in a small coastal beach town who owned a little surf house and allowed overlanders to stay on the property. I stopped in Guayaquil at night to get some food and made my way further. I ended up in Puerto Engabao without issue and set up for a few days to relax. I don't actually surf myself, but after weeks in the cold, rainy mountains, I needed some sun and warm weather. Puerto Engabao is a very small village, the type with only a single main paved road leading to a lighthouse, and 2 small shops to get groceries. It does, however, seem to have no shortage of small fishing boats, providing the town with its main source of food and income. The coast of Ecuador turned out to be a pleasant surprise, being a nearly endless, long sandy beach as far as the eye could see. I spent a few days here, enjoying the hot sun and cool ocean. Ecuador's coastal region takes up nearly a quarter of the country. The locals say Ecuador has 3 regions: the coast, the mountains, and the Oriente, also known as the Amazon region. And then, of course, you have the Galapagos. That's why Ecuador's Ministry of Tourism coined the saying, "All you need is Ecuador." Soon I was heading north towards Montanita, driving some back roads that would take me past a military training area and what appeared to be some fish farms. Near Salinas, I saw a marker on iOverlander for a corrupt police checkpoint run by Ecuador's transit police. Travelers would be shaken down for anything these corrupt police could think of. Sure enough, they stopped me and said they would have to take my truck as it had a crack in the windshield. I took the advice of our friend back in Colombia and began recording them with my camera. They asked what the videos were for, and I told them I make YouTube videos of my travels. Sometimes that includes running into corrupt police. I also showed them the iOverlander report and said I knew I would likely run into them. Instead of asking for money, they agreed to give me back my documents and passport in exchange for deleting the videos I took. Later, I would learn the locals nicknamed the transit police here vultures. We go through national police and military checkpoints all the time with no issues, and while a crack in the windshield is a genuine infraction, these corrupt transit police don't tend to follow the rules themselves. The vehicle's in terrible shape, combined with refusing to write a ticket and using scare tactics, is identical to the run-in I had with corrupt police back in Mexico, who claimed I ran 2 red lights and argued with me for an hour to go to an ATM to pay them. Luckily, however, this would be the only encounter of the sort in Ecuador. I was soon happy to be in Montanita, continuing my little beach vacation. This is the most popular coastal town for tourists in Ecuador, popular for surfing, and also known for having a pretty big party scene. I only stayed here a night and instead opted for a private room in a fairly quiet hostel. In the morning, I continued my drive north, making my way to a Swiss-Ecuadorian-owned piece of land that offered camping, overlooking the bay near Salongo. I stayed here for a few nights, enjoying the breeze on the cliffside and questioning whether that $3 valve stem replacement back in Colombia was causing my tires slowly to deflate over the course of a few days. I had one more camp spot to go to before heading to one of mainland Ecuador's famous beaches. After speaking to a park ranger near Puerto Lopez, he told me I could make my way the 100 or so meters down the beach to a spot in the vegetation. Here, I spent a quiet night with the beach nearly to myself, except for the occasional person taking a walk, and in the morning woke up to the sound of waves crashing onto the shore. I drove into Puerto Lopez to pick up some laundry I had dropped off the night before and get some lunch.
¿Y la camioneta es seguro allá?
Sí.
Sí.
Ese es mi hotel, aquí todo eso.
Ah, bueno.
Yo miro,
Gracias.
no problema. ¿Tú andas solo?
Sí.
¿Con ningún perro?
Solo por un mes.
There almost seems to be a national unspoken agreement in Ecuador on the price of food. Lunch, known as almuerzos, is typically $2.50, sometimes $3. This is typically served with the soup of the day or an option between beef and chicken, followed by a plate of rice, beans, small salad, and either beef or chicken. And for 50 cents more, you can get shrimp as the protein on the coast. These meals all vary in what they come with depending on the region and who's making it. Finally, I had made it to the Playa Las Fradas, possibly Ecuador's most beautiful mainland beach. I got my fins and snorkel gear out and got in the water. I decided I had enough of the heat and started working my way back inland. This turned into one of those days where I intended to drive a few hours and camp, but options along this route were almost non-existent. Finally, I made it to a town where the main highway bridge was down for construction. The sun was already hanging low, and the locals told me the detour through the forest to cross a dam would take an hour and a half, but was dangerous at night due to multiple robberies. I had just enough time, and with little options, went for it. This brought me to the town of Quevedo. I played it safe and got a hotel for the night. The next day, I went to the grocery store to stock up, and had multiple kind locals ask me what I was doing there, telling me it was dangerous and my car could be stolen or I might be robbed. I was fairly surprised because the name Quevedo doesn't really come up anywhere when looking at dangerous areas in Ecuador. This would, however, be the first time I had to pass through a metal detector in order to go into a mall. Taking the friendly locals' advice to heart, I made my way back into the mountains, passing through the same cloud layer that I had gone through on the way down. Eventually, I was back in the beautiful and cool high plateaus. Ecuador definitely has no shortage of stunning landscapes. I made my way to the famous Laguna Quilatoa. The Laguna Quilatoa is a crater lake surrounded by small Quechua communities. The main area has a viewing platform and is popular with tourists, so after taking a look, I made my way around the back of the crater to find some camping. A sandy switchback road took me up through the clouds to a small refugio on the side of the crater, where I made camp for the night. In the morning, the winds picked up and cleared the clouds out of the way, exposing the stunning turquoise waters in the 3-kilometer-wide crater. In the morning, the refugio owner came up and asked if I wanted some tea. I had both mint tea, which is native to this region, and coca tea, brought over from Peru, which is said to help with altitude sickness. We chatted, and that day I would have another long drive, passing back through Banos on the way to Puyo in the Amazonian region. Here, I found a beautiful wild camp along a river. It was just the truck, the tadpoles, the birds, and myself until morning, when some locals came by to get supplies across the river to what I can only guess is a place without road access. Shortly after they left, I was wishing I had tried to start the truck while they were there. The electrical issue turned out to be a simple bad cell, causing the bad battery to drain the good one and itself. I sat on the nearest road for half an hour and no one passed, until I remembered I had the ability to charge the batteries directly with solar. It's fun. Instead of driving, I get to charge the battery via solar. Well, it seems to be charging really fast. I don't know. I'm gonna see. It's only been a few minutes, but just a curiosity. No way. No way. No way. No way. That's fucking awesome. While this technique worked for a few days, it ultimately got me in more trouble as the battery's conditions deteriorated, and soon enough the battery stopped charging altogether. In the meantime, I was heading back up north through the jungle to Quito. I made my way to a beautiful riverside camp owned by an indigenous Amazonian family. It was nice to have solid shelter, as the jungle rains were constant. I had the company of the family as they stoked the fire and made jewelry. They left for the night, and I had the river to myself. I had started this trip alone, and to be honest, getting used to traveling solo again took some time. I was finally getting back into a routine that kept me busy, and was starting to enjoy the freedom that comes with solo travel. However, just as I was starting to get used to things, I was gifted the opportunity to go visit Nikki for Christmas. I made my way back to Quito and put the truck in storage. The holidays passed, and days before our return flights, we opened the news to these scenes. Our flights were a day apart, and we decided I would go gather the truck and see the situation firsthand. We were deciding whether Nikki would cancel her flight and instead fly into Peru. We had driven through many countries with less than favorable reputations, and we felt pretty immune to the fear-mongering the media used in order to get people watching. But this felt different. The president had announced a state of emergency. There was supposedly military at the airport and patrolling the cities. There was a curfew in place. Everyone seemed worried for us.
¿Es un poquito más tranquilo ahora en Ecuador? ¿O sí? Sí, sí, claro.
I spoke to various people, and they all said the same thing. It's complicated. Downtown Quito and Guayaquil, as well as the coast, was a bit risky. But otherwise everything was normal. Things also felt normal, and we decided to continue on. Turns out the tire didn't have a bad valve, but a hidden screw puncture, and we broke a little bearing between the pitman arm and the burr field. When traveling like this, you have to use common sense and take precautions. We decided to avoid the coast and travel further inland away from the riskier areas. There was the occasional military vehicle, but otherwise everything seemed normal. Driving Ecuador is actually pretty civil. People still pass on solid yellow lines, but overall, the roads are good and drivers are calm. It was good to be back in the truck, and it was great to see the beautiful countryside of Ecuador again. The inland route would once again take us past, you guessed it, Banos. From here, we would follow the calm and quiet Amazon highway on the way to the Peruvian border. One of the main dishes in this region made by the indigenous is fried fish. We stopped along the road and enjoyed this delicious fried tilapia with a pitcher of agua de Jamaica, a type of hibiscus juice. For both of us and the juice, these two meals came out to $12. We decided to take some back roads into the jungle, looking for a campsite somewhere along the massive Sangay River. It was slim pickings, and with our past experiences, we didn't feel like camping on a riverbed.
Ooh, almost at the center. Ooh, look at that truck. Old Mercedes. 1112.
Some parts of the highway were under construction, leading to some Mad Max-looking scenes. We found another paid campground with a solid shelter, also run by a very kind family. We then experienced the joys of trying to open a bottle of wine without a corkscrew.
Duh, that was gonna happen.
But I did it so gently. Holy shit. Did you see this? Oh my god.
Oh no.
The next morning, we decided to just close the tent and head out. The rain here wasn't going to let up. This took us on a backroad highway that seems seldom used now, on the way to the city of Cuenca. This route may have the highest concentration of landslides we had ever seen. It also had a number of roadside waterfalls, something we're sure goes hand in hand with the landslides. Luckily, there were no new ones, only some extremely thick fog. As we drove the long winding road, we passed a small litter of puppies on the highway. Ecuador has an enormous amount of stray dogs, not much different than the rest of Latin America. But something about these puppies got us. We stopped, talked about it on the side of the road, but eventually decided to keep going on to Cuenca. Cuenca is Ecuador's third biggest city, home to some beautiful colonial architecture. We spent the day walking around the city, checking out some famous sites, and getting much needed supplies, like a wine opener. There was also a flower market outside the church, with lots of stands selling cacti and succulents. We bought some to make a little garden and add some life to the truck. After days of debating, we went back for one of the puppies. After spending some time with the mother, everything seemed okay, and we went our separate ways. We named him Cuenca. He had multiple parasites living all over him, and the vet estimated he's somewhere between 8 to 12 weeks old based on his teeth. So that's how we ended up with a new member on the Go Alone team, a name that's becoming increasingly ironic. Now with the three of us, a harness, leash, and bag of dog food, we made our way through the rocky canyons to the northern border crossing on the coast between Ecuador and Peru. Our final camp would be a free one at La Reserva Ecológica Arenas. This was a nice little educational center that offered free camping a short 30 minutes from the Huaquillas border crossing. And after filling up one last time for $1.75 a gallon, we made our way to the Peruvian border. I want to say thank you to everyone we met in Ecuador and who made our time there so enjoyable. At the time of making this video, all three of us are in Peru, but that's for next time. And as always, thanks for watching.